What is up, Mizzou fans? Welcome back to the Show Me Football podcast show. I don't even remember what we called it, Brayden. It's just been like so long since we've done anything. It's the Show Me Football Mizzou show, but we are back for the 2024 season. Took a break over the offseason, but we are back, folks. And I guess we can say, since it's Sunday, it is officially game week, actually, Brayden. So the Missouri Tigers take on the Murray State Racers this Thursday night at Faurot Field for the opener, and I am pumped for the season to start. I know you're a little bit indifferent. You're a little terrified for the season to start because then you have to stress about this team and, hope they don't drop that unexpected game. But look, man, it is here. And Brayden, first thing I have to ask, this is the most important question everyone is wondering about. They want to hear your answer in particular. They all told me. They're wondering what your thoughts are on the season opener being on a Thursday night.
I personally like the games on a Thursday night, and that's specifically this is a 100% only me reason. It is an easy way because we've done it against an FCS we've done it against cupcake schools every single time. Yeah. FCS schools for the last 2 years because we did it against South Dakota State last year. I like it being on a Thursday because then the first true Saturday of college football, I don't have to worry about Mizzou, and I can just sit back, I can relax and watch and enjoy the chaos that college football is. I cannot wait. I had so much fun just watching week 0 games yesterday, Georgia Tech beating Florida State, and week 1 is going to be so fun. I like it so much because Mizzou, I don't have to worry about them. It's fun because I know that I can go to all those Thursday games. I have season tickets this year, so I will be at every single home game, I think minus the Vandy one. And I'm just super excited for this season. And I also am very terrified. But overall, I like it being on Thursdays simply because I can go there, enjoy the Mizzou game, and then enjoy the rest of college football. And I know there's a few other games on that Thursday, but you're not missing too much by going and seeing your Tigers. So that's something that I think most Mizzou fans should go and try and get out to be at.
Yeah, I can also appreciate that the first 4 weeks of the schedule. I mean, they should win. They should. I mean, you don't want to 100% guarantee anything because it is college football, but it should be a relatively stress-free first 4 weeks, and so you can really focus on those other games and just see. Because my favorite part of this all is that most likely someone that is ahead of Mizzou in the top 10 is also going to lose. I should mention Florida State lost already to Georgia Tech, so Mizzou's probably going to be in the top 10 the next time they do the rankings. As long as we
don't lose to Murray State, we are a top 10 team.
Yes, already. And what I was going to say is there's probably someone else that's going to lose, I would think, somewhere. I just feel like there's another upset coming, so as long as Mizzou just wins
we have the Texas and Michigan game. Both of them are ahead of us.
Mm-hmm. So there's potential that we could climb even higher before we really get into conference play. But anyway, let's get to the important stuff. So we're going to do a little bit of a preview. Now, there's not too much to dive into because this is Murray State, kind of similar to our I don't know if we did a preview for South Dakota, but I know we did a preview for one of those early games. It's like, hey, not too much to say, but there's things that we want to look for. So I'll start with this, Brayden. What are you looking for Mizzou to do, or what are you looking at? Any position groups, anything that Mizzou can improve on? Like, what are you looking for versus Murray State? Sorry.
I'm really just looking for signs of what this defense can be and seeing them get their footing, seeing really what they can do. You're still not going to see that much against Murray State because the talent is going to outweigh so much. And Drinkwitz last year in the South Dakota game and in the Middle Tennessee State game, you got to remember that the South Dakota State game or the South Dakota game, we were still in a QB competition. Yes. Like Sam Horn played the majority of that second half. People really seem to forget that part. And we didn't see that much of the offense. We didn't see that much of the offense against Middle Tennessee State, and it almost bit us in the ass. Mm-hmm. Then we let the playbook open up against Kansas State. I don't think that we're going to see too much of the playbook open for the first 4 weeks until Texas A&M. Boston College, because they're a Power 5 school as well, could give us a little bit of a scare. But at the same time, I don't think we're going to see too much of the playbook. But I'm just looking for what that defense can do in any way whatsoever. any signs of positivity on the defensive side of the football when we've lost Ennis Rainstraw, Chris Abrams-Drain, Tyron Hopper, Chad Bailey, who do we lose? Darius Robinson on the defensive line, our first-round pick. You have so many players that are new to this system. You have a new defensive coordinator because Snake Baker left. And I'm just looking and seeing what we have in this game against Murray State. I don't know what we're going to see. I don't think that we're going to see too much, and you can't really judge too much off of it. But any sort of sign whatsoever is going to be what I take away from it.
Yeah, I wanted to attach a quick note to like the offense too, because you mentioned how they kind of struggled to start the year, or they kept the playbook closed or whatever. Part of that I also feel like was because they didn't even really know what they were. Like I feel like a lot of heading into last season was, okay, we have a lot of talent, but we have no idea what this is going to look like. And I felt like a lot of players, a lot of coaches within that football program were kind of thinking like, we think we're good, but we don't know. And so they just had to see it for themselves to believe it. And then once they saw it, and once they kind of broke out against K-State, it's like, okay, like we're a good football team, and they just needed that confidence. And this year they already have that, knowing that, hey, this is pretty comfortably a top 10 offense in the nation this year. So I have no concerns whatsoever about the offense versus Murray State. And I think you're going to see a lot more points scored, because I remember like halfway through the third quarter against South Dakota last year, there was a moment, I believe, where South Dakota scored and made it like 28-10 or 28-13 or something like that. And it's like, hold on a second, is this over? And you were like wondering just a little bit. And then there was also MTSU. That was almost a disaster. But I think those days are over with when it comes to this offense. I think the wide receivers are much better. I think the running backs are much better. I think the offensive line is even better than last year. But we'll get into the offense a little bit later. That's just kind of my expectations for this Murray State game. But the thing that I'm looking for, as I asked you, I'm also going to go with the defense. I want to see with how they settle in. There's a lot of new names and a lot of new faces on this defense. And I just don't know what it's all going to look like.
Yeah.
You mentioned losing KAD and Rakestraw. That's going to be big. Who's replacing them? We have Toriano Pride, the transfer, but then there's Drayden Norwood, who was really good as a number 3 cornerback last year, but how is he going to look as a starter? And then Nicholas Deloche is probably going to play a lot, and he was only a freshman last year. How is he going to look with all this increased playing time? And then, there's just a lot of new names in the secondary. Linebacker, I'm the most confident in, just because we added so much and we're also returning a lot on top of it. And then the defensive line, I should really just start going into the expectations for the offense and the defense, because that's really what this is. But that's mostly what I'm going to be looking for during the Murray State. I keep wanting to call them Missouri State.
Murray State. Go ahead. I'll say this about the offense against Murray State. I just want them to not be predictable in the sense, like, I don't want them to come out lazy, because we talk about the expectation for the offense. We're expecting a top 10 offense, one of the best offenses in college football, again, because that's what they were last year. They were so good, and we have literally like almost everybody returning besides Cody Schrader and a few offensive linemen. And you have Brett Norfleet in his sophomore season. You have all of these guys returning. And I just hope that they didn't get too lazy and too full of themselves over the offseason. Like, oh, we got this. We know what we are. Like, they need to still come out with that fire under their ass that they came out with in that K-State game and for the rest of the season last year, because we're going to need that if you want to win in the SEC, if we want to make the playoffs, if we want to make any sort of run in the playoffs. Like, that offense has to have a fire under their ass all year long.
And that's one of the areas of Coach Drinkwitz's coaching that I actually really like, and I think he does a really good job, is not letting the trap game happen. And the way he even talked, because he had a press conference earlier today, he talked about how Murray State he thinks is the toughest team they've had to play to open a season since he's been here, which obviously is not true. They played 2020 Bama in his first year. But Drinkwitz is not effing around. He respects the opponent. I also saw a clip that the Mizzou Football social media team put out, and Drinkwitz basically gave a speech after like the last kind of official practice before game week. And he was talking about how, if you lose this game, your season's already over, basically. Or like, if you have college football aspirations, you have to go 1-0 each week.
Yep.
And I really trust
team playoffs. Like that's his mentality. That's exactly where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's exactly what I think his mentality should be. I'm glad that he's still treating it as you have to go 1-0 every single week, because the expectation should be perfection if you want to eventually get to that national championship.
Yeah, and I think Drinkwitz understands that. And most coaches, I mean, that feels like a low bar for your coach to get over, is to have his team share the same mentality of going 1-0. But I mean, I just think sometimes, especially with college kids, you have to drill that into their heads.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Murray State, I expect this to be a blowout win. Anything less would be slightly disappointing. But it's okay, because the next week you're not, this is going to be a true ramp up. And another thing that I like about this period of the season, or these first 4 games of the schedule, is that a lot of the underclassmen are going to get to play, and that gives them valuable snaps that maybe allows them to contribute in conference play, guys that you didn't think would be able to, because the games would have been too important for them to play earlier on. So a guy like Williams Winery, who now becomes a little more important with the Darius Smith injury, which we'll get into here in a minute. He becomes more important. Maybe you throw him out there against Murray State and Buffalo, and you're like, hold on, this kid's like ready to play right now. And he's a piece that we didn't think we'd have, at least not that big of a piece heading into the season. So I'm also going to be looking for a lot of the underclassmen against Murray State. Hopefully we get to see them play. That was another annoying thing about last year. Those games were never far enough apart on the scoreboard to even get to see those guys.
Because we only beat South Dakota 35-10, I think the final score was. Middle Tennessee was a dogfight until the end of the game, and then every other game after that was like SEC opponent. Memphis was close, but Memphis is a good football team. They're a really good Group of 5 team. Like, those were games you had to have your best players in the entire time.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see some of the underclassmen. But all that being said, Brayden, if you're ready, we'll kind of get into the expectations for the offense. And so we have the depth chart pulled up, guys. We're going to discuss the depth chart because the football team released their first official depth chart earlier today. So we could kind of combine these two. We'll go over the depth chart real quick for the offense, and then we'll get into our expectations for them this year. How does that sound, Brayden?
Sounds good with me.
All right, so quarterback, of course, your starter's Brady Cook, with the backup being Drew Pine. There's really no argument there. Running back is really interesting because they have Nate Noel or Marcus Carroll as the starter, and then Jamal Roberts as the backup. Now, Drinkwitz did say in his press conference earlier today that Nate Noel will go out there first and Marcus Carroll will mix in. I remember talking to you in the group chat, and I mentioned that Drinkwitz, or it was actually Gabe, who said on his show on YouTube that Nate Noel is the number one, which kind of surprised me a little bit. I figured that would be Marcus Carroll, but I'm not complaining at all because Nate Noel was also very good, and it's definitely going to be a 2-back rotation at the very least with those two guys. But I love hearing that about Nate Noel. I'm really excited about him. I think he's got potential as like an NFL scat back. He has blazing speed. Just watching his highlights from App State after learning of his commitment, I was really excited about him. What are your thoughts there?
I'm excited for either of them. Again, both of them were great in the Sun Belt Conference. Carroll was from Georgia State, right?
Yep.
And Nate Noel was from Appalachian State. Drinkwitz is Drink coached at App State a while back, but he was only for a season there before he came to Mizzou. So there's probably some sort of connection there that got Noel to Mizzou, outside of the fact that he is just a really good football player.
That was a sneaky good ad.
I think, like you said, just the surprise that Nate Noel is going to be the starter, or like he's trending to be the starter, because it seemed like the expectation all offseason was that Marcus Carroll was going to be the starter. If Noel's coming out of camp and he's running well behind this absolutely loaded offensive line, which I know we'll get into, if he's coming out and he has the ability to be that NFL type scat back that you were saying, where he's able to just be a massive part of this passing game, and then Marcus Carroll can be a little bit more of your bruiser, run in between the tackles. And because we know that Cody Schrader was like the guy to just run in between the tackles on inside zones or outside zones. He had the speed to be able to get outside and do that. I think that both Nate Noel and Marcus Carroll have the ability to do exactly what Cody Schrader did, but a little bit better in this Kirby Smart scheme because they are both a little bit faster.
Moore, I should say.
Kirby Moore. Kirby Smart's the Georgia coach. Kirby Moore. They have the ability to do that in this Kirby Moore scheme because they're a little bit faster than Schrader, and both of them in the highlight reels that I've watched of them, because there's not really that much film available. You can see them like breaking off tackles.
Yeah, I think they're both a bit more athletic than Schrader was. Yeah. And then wide receiver, of course, you got Luther Burden with the backup being Mekhi Miller. This is for like each theoretical receiver spot. Theo Weiss, the starter, the backup, Marquise Johnson, Mookie Cooper, the starter, backup, Joshua Manning. We've heard really good things about Joshua Manning in camp. He's seemingly taking a step forward this
Summit
year.
Represent.
Yeah. And then Marquise Johnson, I think he's going to absolutely go off this year. And then you bring back everyone else from last year with Luther, Theo, Mekhi, Mookie. It's just, we knew this receiver room was loaded. Not too much more to say than that.
I mean, I don't even think that they added anybody in the transfer portal at wide receiver.
Nope.
Like, I think that might be the only position where they did not add somebody in the transfer portal because we've added literally everywhere else. I think the expectation, and I know we've talked about this at least a little bit, is that Mookie Cooper is going to be the starter, but you expect Joshua Manning or Mekhi Miller or just somebody to step up and really take over that Mookie Cooper role because he's been a little bit of a bust.
Up until last year, yeah.
Yeah, like last year, Mookie Cooper was great. He had a massive catch against Florida, and he was a really productive player, had a few nice catches against Ohio State as well.
He's like the go-to third down guy last year.
Yeah, like he's just he's a shit. He was kind of like this year he was a lot like Barrett Bannister was the year before. Like he's just open on third down most of the time, and he'll get you the first down when you really need it. Outside of that, he doesn't really do too much. But Luther Burden and Theo Weiss are one of the best duos, if not the best duo, wide receiver duo in the SEC, if not all of college football. Like, they're both going to get drafted. Luther Burden's probably going to be the number one overall drafted wide receiver this year. It's either going to be him or McMillan that goes to Arizona. And then Theo Weiss was a projected like third or fourth round pick last year. You could easily see him go in the third or maybe even in the second round. I don't know how good this wide receiver class is, but when you have those expectations from Theo Weiss, from Luther Burden, and again, we did not add a single transfer to this wide receiver room, and you have a stacked freshman, redshirt freshman and sophomore class behind them with Mekhi Miller, with Joshua Manning, with Marquise Johnson. You have all of these guys that can step up because Burden, Cooper, and Weiss are probably all going to be gone next year.
Yeah, it's absolutely loaded. Then that's not even mentioning guys like James Madison and Courtney Crutchfield, the freshman, who seemingly have a highlight catch every single day in practice. So, yeah, wide receivers stacked. They're set there. Tight end, Brett Norfleet, and then backups, Tyler Stevens or Jordan Harris. Offensive tackle.
Not Tyler Stevens.
Yeah, I was thinking in the back of my head.
He cannot catch.
Yeah. I'm just going to run through the offensive line. Marcus Bryant, left tackle. Javen Richardson behind him, Caden Green left guard, Logan Reichert behind him, center Connor Tollison, Drake Heismeyer, Tristan Wilson behind him, offensive guard or right guard, Cameron Johnson, Curtis Piegler behind him, right tackle Armin Membo, Mitchell Walters behind him. And then I'll just go ahead and say the special teams real quick, or place kicker and kickoff returner. That's the kicker is going to be Blake Craig. Oh, I should say also for the Murray State game, going to be watching special teams to see if they have their
see what Blake Craig does if he messes up really at all.
Yeah. And then Marquise Johnson is the kickoff returner with Joshua Manning being the backup. So offensive line is another position group that just looks absolutely loaded on paper this year. I think they're going to be even better than they were last year. You got Cameron Johnson with a year of experience in this program under his belt. Armin Membu, who looks to be NFL bound after this year. Connor Tollison. Hopefully he can snap the ball this year, because
that's really the only negative thing I was going to say about the offensive line. Hopefully Connor Tollison can just snap the ball.
And then once Marcus Bryant transferred in from SMU, that was a really good late grab in the spring. Once he came in here, you figured he was going to be the left tackle with Caden Green going into his natural position at left guard. And I think.
And Oklahoma fans were making fun of us for getting Caden Green and trying to put him at left tackle and then moving him to guard. Anyways, it's like, okay, we have a better left tackle and we can put him at his natural position, and our offensive line is just stacked.
They made fun of us for paying him more money to come and play left guard, and it's like,
sorry, your poverty.
Yeah, how is that a diss on us?
I don't have too much to add about this offensive line outside of the fact that I think it's going to be fantastic. Like you said, it could be a little bit better than last year because we have so much returning talent. Membu and Johnson and Tollison, all returning guys. And then Caden Green and Marcus Bryant. Caden Green was a starting freshman for, I think, 6 games at Oklahoma last year.
Yeah, 6 or 7, I think.
Yeah, and then Marcus Bryant was
all AAC.
Yeah, all ACC or AAC.
Well, I guess ACC tackle now, but
tackle at SMU. You add those 2 guys to, again, a line that was fantastic last year. 3 returning guys. I think they'll fit into the fold pretty well. I think worst case scenario, the right side of your offensive line is fantastic, and the left side of your line is above average to good.
Yeah.
And that's a really good spot to be in, bearing any injuries. But even then, the fact that I know and can recognize a few names that are backups is a really good sign when you know the backups on your offensive line and you know what they can do and you know that they're good. You know that you have so much depth there that even if somebody does go down, you have potential replacements. This offensive line's in a great spot with the running backs we have, with Kirby Moore, with his scheme. I'm really excited for what this offensive line can do, and how to see how we can just dominate the trenches is something that I'm really looking forward to on this offense. Which is really underrated because of how good this wide receiver room is. That's something that's not going to get noticed and picked up, is how damn good we are in the trenches and are at running the ball. Because everybody talked about the passing game last year, and then it was Cody Schrader going off for the final 5 to 6 weeks of the year because everybody was so focused on the passing game for the first half of the year and completely forgot how to defend us against the run because they were so worried about getting beat on the pass.
Yeah. And so, combining all of that and, kind of putting a little bit of a bow on it and then talking about the expectations for the offense, this being the second year of Kirby Moore also makes me pretty excited because usually when you're able to retain your coordinator and bring them back for another year, that's
unlike Snake Baker.
Yeah, unlike Snake Baker, Kirby Moore chose to stick around despite some positions being offered to him elsewhere and having some head coaching interest at a couple places. I think this offense is going to take another step under Kirby Moore. I think they're going to show more maturity this year. Sometimes the offense did hit lulls last year, and I think you're going to see less of that with, this being Kirby Moore's second year. Keeping your coordinator, that's kind of becoming a rarity these days in college football, especially when you have a really good one. And Kirby Moore was really good last year. So expectations for the offense, I'm kicking it off by talking about this being Kirby Moore's second year. I just think that you're going to see the maturity of this offense is going to be a big thing for me to watch.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, the maturity of this offense, and like I was saying earlier, just hoping and knowing that they're not going to be lazy and be too full of themselves. It's just that next step. Did we take it? That's really the biggest question with the offense. I don't have that much doubt that they didn't, but it's really the only thing left that they really have to prove. And I think that we'll really get a sense of that in that A&M game. because that's our first really big test. Don't sleep on Boston College, though. They beat us in 2021. That is a very personal game. But
also, they hired Bill O'Brien to be their new head coach after
I forgot about that.
That was after Jeff Hafley left for the Green Bay Packers. But Bill O'Brien is kind of a good coaching hire for the program that Boston College is at this point. So they'll be interesting. I mean, that should still be a win, obviously. It should still be an easy win. But, yeah, we'll see.
For sure. I don't really have anything else left to add on the offense.
Yeah, I will say one more thing. I also think having Kirby Moore is going to be big, especially for Brady Cook. I'm also looking for Brady Cook to take just one more small step. I think, he's always been a guy with a lower ceiling. A lot of us were shocked last year by his play. And he's a good college starter at this point, obviously. And, we're actually going into this year excited that he's the starter. I mean, he should.
Yeah, last year it was me begging for Sam Horn to start instead. And I'd like to formally apologize to Brady Cook because I'm now at the point where I think, and this is not a popular concept whatsoever, but just watching Brady Cook, and this might be a little bit biased, but I genuinely think like he could be a backup NFL quarterback. There's nothing that he does that a lot of quarterbacks that get drafted in the later rounds don't do, and he has the threat of running the ball.
Yeah, the running thing is pretty big. If there's one thing that keeps him back from the NFL, to me, it's going to be the arm strength. I just think
even then it was pretty solid last year.
Yeah, no, I don't say that as like a true or a complete knock. It's just that he doesn't have the arm strength that most NFL quarterbacks are going to have. But that said, I think he plays pretty smart. You mentioned the running ability already. I was impressed with his completion percentage last year. I wasn't sure if he would be able to get that up or not. I think a lot of credit goes to Kirby Moore, though, for his development. And I'm looking for Brady Cook to take one more small step this year. Obviously, very good last year. But as we got deeper into conference play, and no one really talked about it because it was never really an issue that caused us to lose games or anything, he started to become a little bit more pedestrian in conference play, especially during that kind of Tennessee, Florida stretch late in the year. And then,
but he showed up when he had to,
and he also started to throw some bad interceptions then too. So I'm looking for Brady Cook to eliminate more of those really, really bad interceptions that he threw last year, because he was always good for a back.
The LSU game was the worst.
Yeah, they still, in the Georgia game, the throw of the defensive tackle Nasir Stackhouse still haunts me. I don't know what the hell he was looking at there. And those games made me question if Brady Cook was a good enough quarterback to truly beat one of these blue blood programs. Obviously, we went out there and beat Ohio State, but even in that game, Brady was pretty pedestrian in the first half. So I'm just looking for Brady to be more consistent against better competition this year. That's a step that I'm looking for him to take.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I think A&M, that's going to be a massive test going on the road in College Station. We don't really know what A&M is going to look like, but week 5, and we're coming off of a bye, luckily, into that game. But 11 a.m. at College Station, October 5th, that's going to be the first really big game of the year because you expect these first 4 weeks against Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and Vanderbilt to just go out there and wipe the floor.
Yeah, that's all I got for the offensive expectations. So if you're ready, Brayden, we'll jump into the defense.
Sounds good to me.
So defensive end, Johnny Walker, backup Joe Moore. Defensive tackle, Christian Williams, backup Sterling Webb or Marquise Gracial. Also at defensive tackle, we got Chris McClellan being the starter on the other side with his backup being Jalen Marshall or Sam Williams. Defensive end, on the other side, Zion Young or Eddie Kelly. I also think Eddie Kelly could figure into playing defensive tackle as well. He's a bit of a tweener. And then we have the backups being Jalen Brown or Williams Winery. To kind of talk about the defensive line as a whole, obviously, Darius Smith was a huge loss for this defense. He tore his ACL in practice just a few weeks before the season. I'm especially bummed about that one because he just felt like a guy that was going to pop off this year. Freak athlete, super long arms, really disruptive player at Georgia, and, not a ton of playing time. and he came over here, drew rave reviews from the coaches during spring, had a really good spring game. He was going to start at that position that all of a sudden I'm blanking on. That is unique to Corey Batoon's defense, a defensive end that is a pure pass rusher that can also cover a little bit. And I think that role was going to be perfect for him. I felt like he was going to cause some turnovers next year, so that obviously hurts a lot. And I'll get your take on that in a second. But as a whole, this defensive line I still feel pretty good about. I don't know if it'll be good as last year just because of that whole of Darius Robinson being left behind. I think Johnny Walker will take a step forward, though. He was named a captain this year. He'll be a leader. I like the defensive tackles. Little bit concerned about the depth there. I'm not sure how the depth will look. Yeah. And then I'm also really excited about Zion Young on the other side. He also feels like a guy that will pop off this year and get a bunch of sacks.
I really like Johnny Walker. He pissed me off a few times last year with some just boneheaded penalties, really in that LSU game where he got kicked out of. And then I think he had one in the Ohio State game, which negated some, or I forget, but he did something in that Ohio State game that was just super boneheaded. If he can clean that up,
he said something apparently. I think it was, or
yeah,
he pushed. I think he pushed somebody. He pushed somebody, and it was right after we. I think we're gonna get the ball back.
Yeah.
Like that.
But he's done stuff like just those few incidents really put a damper on my opinion of him. But at the same time, he was just a monster at times last year and really just took over games. And I really think
he was the defensive MVP of the Cotton Bowl too.
Yeah,
people forget.
I really think that he can just show up and absolutely just wreck games at points whenever we need him to on the defensive line. He can just take over because he showed that ability against Ohio State last year and some other teams. He was really good in the Georgia game, if I remember, against teams that like Georgia had Amarius Mims, who's going into the if I remember, he was a first round pick.
Yeah, he was a first round pick.
Yeah,
he went top 10.
Like Johnny Walker going up against them, like he was going up against first round picks and doing a fine job. And he has another year where some of those first round picks are gone and he's the big guy. He's the big dog. Like, I think that he could be a very high draft pick this year. I don't know if he'll go in the first round just because of his size and the stature and everything, but he is a guy that I'm really looking forward to. And I really think that he can become that Darius Robinson, just that leader of the defensive line. He's definitely not the same player as Darius Robinson, very different play styles, but I think that he can just take over games, really control the pace of play of the defensive line and control the trenches for the Tigers. Like you said, the defensive line or the defensive tackle and nose tackle, our depth behind Christian Williams and Chris McClellan is a little bit worrisome. I don't know that much about Sterling and the rest of the names that you mentioned. I'm kind of wishy-washy there.
Marquise Gratial, it sounded like he took a lot of reps with the ones during practice. As of recently, the staff seems high on him, like he's taking a step forward. Sterling Webb was the transfer from New Mexico State. We'll see how he factors in. And then Jalen Marshall is the same class as Marquise Gratial. We'll see if he takes a step. And then Sam Williams was a freshman a year ago. So,
like, Chris McClellan's going to be great for run defense. He's going to be just a very traditional zero.
Space eater.
Like, yeah, he's just going to be a big guy that's going to eat space. He's going to line up on the center in a zero technique or a one technique. Like, he'll just line up there. And then Christian Williams, he'll line up at the 3 and he'll be your standard defensive tackle pass rusher. And then you have Zion Young and
Eddie Kelly.
No, Johnny Walker on the edges. Johnny Walker, like you said, in that Joker role, and then Zion Young, more of your just traditional defensive end. I'm really excited about him. He was on a really bad Michigan State team last year in a really bad situation with Mel Tucker. I'm excited to see what he can do because he's a sophomore, right?
I think a redshirt sophomore. I know he played a lot.
He's a junior transfer.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, you're a junior transfer from a mess of a team where you produced, and now you're in a fantastic situation on a defensive line with a bunch of other people who can contribute as well, and you're kind of left alone. I think that he can really show up in some key moments. So I'm excited for him to see what kind of development that Zion Young can have here. I know you mentioned the linebackers, but I'm really excited about the linebackers, so I want to get into this. Tristan Newsome is a dog. I loved him in the game against Ohio State. Him and Newsome. Yes, Chuck Hicks. Him and Chuck Hicks just stepped up so much in that Ohio State game where we didn't have Bailey and Tyron Hopper. I'm really excited about both of them. Khalil Jacobs is a transfer from South Alabama. Alabama wanted him. We were able to steal him because of Corey Batoon. Corey Flagg, he stuck around. I know that we talked about that whenever we did the Snake Baker video, that Corey Flagg might leave because he was a more Blake Baker guy and had a history with Blake Baker, and that's why he came to the university. He stuck around. Haven't heard too much about him in camp, if you know anything.
I'll say this. He was a multi-year starter at Miami, and he probably might not even start. It might be Chuck Hicks ahead of him, and then you have Khalil Jacobs as well. Tristan Newsome would probably be the starter.
Like, we could seriously have two linebackers go down with season-ending injuries, and I'd be like, okay, we're
fine. Especially when you look at the backups, because you got Jeremiah Beasley, who is a highly sought-after recruit that transferred from Michigan after practice. As a freshman, I think it's because of the coaching change there. We nabbed him out of the portal. That was a very underrated grab. And then you have Brian Huff, who's a 4-star recruit a year ago. Brayshawn Littlejohn, who is a red shirt freshman, I believe, and is pushing for playing time. Then you have Nicholas Rodriguez, true freshman this year, big-time recruit. Ohio State wanted him. So if there's one position group on defense that I have zero concern about, it is linebacker.
Yeah. Like, all of them, like, out of that entire group, like everybody else that you mentioned, along with the 4 guys that I was talking about, all like out of all of those guys, 2 of them 100% will show up and be good starters week in and week out. Like, there's almost no doubt in my mind we will have minimum 2 middle linebackers that'll show up and be really good players, and I'm excited for that.
Also, Khalil Jacobs, he's a guy that I kind of wonder if he'll play some of that joker role that Corey Batoon wanted out of Darius Smith. A lot of people, after Darius Smith got hurt, they just looked immediately to defensive ends, but who's to say it couldn't be a linebacker, someone like Khalil Jacobs, who was really good,
who is really familiar with Corey Batoon's system.
And he blitzed off the edge a lot at South Alabama. He's got good speed. It looks like could probably cover a little bit. I mean, if you're expecting a defensive end to cover, then I don't know why you couldn't ask the same of Khalil Jacobs, who I think has pretty decent athleticism. So, I'm really excited about this linebacker group. I don't have too much else to say other than that. I think I know I put on our notes that we were going to name one breakout player on offense and defense. I'm just going to go ahead and reveal mine now. Mine on defense is Tristan Newsome. I think he has the potential to be an all. Was that yours? I think he has the potential to be an all SEC guy.
You know how much I love him, like, just because of that Ohio State game and how much I saw him just flying around the field, and his ability in that Florida game last year whenever our guys went down. Like, he's so good. I'll come up with somebody else because I did have somebody else in mind, but continue.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I just think he'll be an all SEC guy this year. I think he's going to be even better than Hopper. I think he has better speed than Hopper as well. I think also an issue that Hopper had is he wouldn't break down enough before the tackle. And even the LSU game always sticks in my mind for Hopper, where he had multiple chances to get Jaden Daniels, and just he was like over pursuing, and then Jaden Daniels just put one move on him, and Hopper would be like running out of the play. And it's like, slow down a little bit, dude. I think Tristan Newsome is a little more nuanced in his game. I think you're going to see that this year.
Yeah. We haven't gotten to the secondary yet either, but for like my breakout player, and he was really good last year as a true freshman, Marvin Burks. He was so good. Like, he was good last year. Like you said, you think that Tristan Newsome can be an all SEC player. I think that Marvin Burks could end up being one of the best safeties in the league this year. He is He was fantastic last year. You give him another year in the system. He's one of the very few returning players in this secondary that started for the majority of the season last year. Him and Charleston are really the two big guys there. Drayden Norwood got a little bit of playing time, but now you're expecting him to be your outside cornerback. And then Carnile, they have him listed in the star role. That's the role that Blake Baker had as well. And then Toriano Pride, you're expecting him to like be your really big number one corner. He was the first big commit that Drink got in this year's transfer portal out of Clemson. Yep. You expect him to go out there week in and week out and lock down teams' number one receivers, and the rest of this defense, they can do it, or the rest of the secondary, can do a really good job locking down everybody else. Marvin Burks, I think, is going to be flying around the field. He is fantastic in coverage, and you never really see him. And that's usually a good thing with your secondaries, is you don't want to see them because nobody ever throws the ball towards his side of the field.
Yeah, the secondary, so I'll just run through who they have listed as starter and backup real quick. So starter at star, you already mentioned Dalen Carnell, backup Sidney Williams, cornerback Toriano Pride, or Nick Deloach, with the backup being Shamar McNeil. Other side, Drayden Norwood, the starter, with the backup being Marcus Clark, or Jamarion Wayne, who we should mention transitioned once again from being a wide receiver back to a defensive back, but the staff thinks he'll contribute this year. I'm excited to see what he looks like. Safety, we have Joseph Charleston or Trevez Johnson, with the backup being true freshman Trajan Greco, and then Marvin Burks with his backup being Caleb Flagg, which surprised me a little bit, but in a good way. I've heard really good things out of him in spring and camp. He's the walk-on younger brother of Corey Flagg, the linebacker, and a lot of people thought, oh, we're just bringing him in to, try to secure Corey Flagg, whatever. No, Caleb Flagg has been like really good in practice. He might actually be a legit player, and he's being named the backup behind Marvin Burks. Probably, I would figure that's the free safety spot, even though that's not what they listed him as on there, because I figured Joseph Charleston would probably be that strong safety. A lot of guys are going to rotate in, though. So I wouldn't put too much stock into who's being named the backup or the starter here. I think we're going to see a ton of guys play in the secondary.
Sorry, say that again.
I don't really think the depth chart matters here. I think a lot of these guys are going to rotate in the secondary. I mean, you're going to see a lot of guys play. Sidney Williams,
I think
too.
that we have a lot of depth across the entire defense. Especially in our secondary, like you mentioned. I'm really excited to see a bunch of these guys.
It's a largely unproven group, I should say.
Yeah.
But I just think there's too much talent here, not for a couple guys to really emerge.
I think that Pride is really just going to be like the heart and soul of the second. Like, he's going to be the guy that people look towards. Marvin Burks is, like I said, I think that he's going to step up and be that sort of leader as well.
Yeah, and Dalen Carnell also, I mean, he's becoming a veteran here, and I think I remember there was a list that, I think it was Big Game Boomer, he put out another list, and it was, it wasn't him. It was someone else, though. It was a list of, like, best safety. Although it does get a little confusing with Dalen Carnell being left off best corner list or best safety list, because not everyone considers him a safety and not everyone considers him a corner. He's the star, which is a unique position in this defense. But, yeah, he's going to be a leader in the secondary for sure. You have a good foundation of veterans in this group, but we definitely need to see one or two guys, whether it's Nick Deloach or Marvin Burks, or if it's Trajan Greco and Jamarion Wayne. We need to see a couple guys really emerge in the secondary for me to feel really good about it. I don't feel bad about it. It's just a largely unproven group. But overall, for this defense, I should have mentioned too real quick before I say this, they have Luke Bowers, the starting punter, with Orion Phillips behind him, and then punt returner, they have Luther Burden with Daniel Blood or Theo Weiss behind him. I know some people are a little upset seeing Luther Burden being named as the punt returner, because it's the stage of his career where, like, you shouldn't really need him back there. It should be someone else taking those hits, but I'm sure that'll get changed probably after the first. Once they get into conference play, that'll probably get changed.
Yeah, I know that Luther Burden was listed as the punt returner. I don't want to see him out there at all outside of wide receiver.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. But back to what I was saying about this defense. Man, if they can just have an above average year, I feel really good about the team as a whole because I think the offense is obviously going to be the reason that you win games this year. I mean, the offense is what this team is built on. So just give this offense an above average defense. That's all we're asking from Corey Batoon and staff. Like, make this an above average defense. But what do you want to see, and what are your expectations
from the defense? I just be league average, honestly. Like, if you have a league average to above, like, and I'm talking about the SEC, like if you have a league average defense in the SEC with a top 10 offense in college football, I think that you're going to be fantastic.
Well, and something that is music to my ears, especially if this is going to be just a league average defense, is Corey Batoon's style of defense wants to create more turnovers. So if you're an average defense but creating turnovers, that's a really good thing, because we didn't create a ton of turnovers last year with Blake Baker. Blake Baker was more of a risk taker. He blitzed a lot. He left guys open on defense. Corey Batoon's not doing that. He wants to drop guys back and say, hey, beat us. Like, come and get it. And he wants to create turnovers. So if we can be that and create turnovers, I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah, like if they can just create some turnovers and limit the amount of points, like just create turnovers, that's really what you have to ask this defense to do. And just put this offense in really good positions, because you know how efficient that they are.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But Brayden, I think that wraps up the offense, or the defense, sorry. I know we never actually got to our breakout player on offense, and we already revealed it for the defense.
Joshua Manning.
That was in my notes. Okay, that's your breakout guy? Yeah. Interesting. Okay. I think I'm going to go with Marquise Johnson, and I know he kind of technically already broke out as a freshman, but I just think he's going to be even better this year, and teams know who he is, and now he's going to take that next step to where he becomes a 500 to 600 yard guy in this offense. He's going to have to overtake somebody, and that's why I kind of, whenever we were talking yesterday, I'm like, I feel like someone's probably going to overtake Mookie Cooper this year. I feel like that's Marquise Johnson, just because, and I like Mookie Cooper, and he improved a lot last year, but there's guys that have way higher ceilings that are pushing behind him, and they need that playing time, and it's going to get to a point where these guys are going to leave the coaches no other choice but to put them in over Mookie, and Marquise Johnson feels like that guy to me. He's going to take a huge step this year, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, he was fantastic last year. I think that he can get more of Mookie Cooper snaps when we go to those 4 wide receiver sets. I think that Marquise Johnson's going to be a guy that we look towards a lot. But at the same time, I think that Joshua Manning is going to sneak his way into some of those roles as well and make himself known, kind of like Marquise Johnson did last year.
Yeah, Brett Norfleet's also a good one that neither of us picked, but if someone else was here, that's a good one too. Brett Norfleet could definitely be one of the best, if not the best tight end in the SEC this year. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up what we think of the offense and the defense. That was the first official depth chart from the program before the Murray State game later this week. Before we wrap up the show today, though, I wanted to go over some of the notable games on the schedule, or games that stand out. Brayden, I'll let you go first. What's a game or two that like really stand out to you on the schedule, or that you think hold the most importance, or not a lot of people are talking about?
Oklahoma. Like, plain and simple, Oklahoma is the game this year. November 9th. Like, November 9th is going to be the most important day of the year for me. Plain and simple. Bama game as well. I think that there's a chance that we can go in there and win it. I'm not expecting to, but I think that there's a chance. I think that those are really the big 2 games this year. And I think A&M is like our first big chest.
I was going to say A&M because that's where we find out if this team is serious or not, because, you know, that's your first true test of the year, and they're probably, I mean, they're ranked 20th right now. We'll see if they hold that ranking then, but that's going to be your first, you know, ranked matchup of the season, if, you know, both teams are still ranked. And then Auburn right before Bama is a sneaky one. I think, you know, those are 2 games that I think most Mizzou fans will tell you, hey, Mizzou's probably going to win this, or they should win this, but I'm thinking more of a toss-up game. I mean, Auburn's going to be one of those teams that's not going to win the league or anything, but they could ruin someone's season if you don't take them seriously.
Yeah, Auburn is going to be a very improved team. I think that maybe it's just because of me watching that Iron Bowl last year, but if that's the kind of Auburn team that we get this year, and Hugh Freeze is really building a team there at Auburn, then we might be in for a really interesting game that week, and I think that we could very easily overlook that team. That is definitely a game that scares me as well.
Yeah, and they just brought in a 5-star freshman receiver this year. Cam Coleman, it was. He was the number 5 recruit this year. He's going to kind of be their Luther Burden, like an electric player, going to play a lot. Big, strong wide receiver. He's drawn comparisons to George Pickens. Like, he's going to be a guy that gives you headaches if you don't take that matchup seriously. So, yeah, those are the notable games on the schedule. Now, we're going to give our record predictions, and then we're going to go ahead and end this episode. It's been a good one, but Brayden, I'm going to put you on the spot. What is your record prediction for the Missouri Tigers in 2024? Do they make the 12-team playoff?
I think the expectation should be the playoffs. Like, that's what I am expecting with really how easy and well our schedule lines up, and with the way that I think some other team schedules and seasons are going to fall. I think that we should make the playoffs. Like, that is my expectation as a Mizzou fan. That is setting me up for failure. That's why you mentioned and I mentioned before, I am terrified of this season, because I truly believe those should be the expectations for this Tigers team, is that we should make the playoffs. With what record? I think you have to go 10-2. I think this team is capable of going 11-1. And call me crazy, it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to be 12-0.
No, I'm surprised that you didn't say the South Carolina game was an important game to you on the schedule.
The South Carolina game worries me. Ask me the week the week before.
If we beat Oklahoma, because
if we beat Oklahoma 1,000%, I'm going to be worried about South Carolina.
Oh my God.
100% I'm going to be worried about South Carolina.
That is our Super Bowl, though.
But again, it depends on Beamer. Like, what Beamer are we going to get? Are we going to get a Shane Beamer team of 2 years ago? Or are we going to get South Carolina's team last year that had no offensive line, which was just dog shit? But going into Columbia, after you beat Oklahoma, saying that we beat Oklahoma and then we go into South Carolina, that's not going to be an easy environment. It's still an SEC environment on the road. And if Beamer has that team playing ball, that's not going to be an easy game.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely could be a trap game sort of scenario, but I trust Drinkwitz that that's not going to happen. And to be honest, I'm not too impressed with Shane Beamer. And also, they're starting Lenore Sellers at quarterback this year, who they really like, but I mean, we have no idea what he's going to look like, and he's going to be starting for the first time. You know, they don't have Spencer Rattler anymore, and he covered up a lot of blemishes on that team. But what is your official record prediction? I mean, I know you laid out a couple scenarios, but
I'll go 10-2. I'll take the over.
Okay.
I'm definitely going to bet the under.
Oh my God.
I think that they'll go over. I really do.
I'm going to say they do make the 12-team playoff, and I'm going to say they go 11-1.
Okay.
And I don't know which one it's going to be, but either the Alabama or the Oklahoma game is going to be a loss. I don't think they'll win both of them.
If we lose Oklahoma, the season's a failure.
I mean, Oklahoma fans will say that. We could go on and win the national championship even after losing to them, and they'd still say something about it. But I get it. It's a bragging rights game. That's going to be the new rivalry here in the SEC, even though they say it's not. I mean, they've kind of officially taken the place of Arkansas. Arkansas is now we don't even care about Arkansas anymore. Arkansas cares more about us than we care about them.
I haven't even thought of Arkansas this episode.
Arkansas is like, you've been around here long enough, we're okay with you. Yeah. It's just whatever now. But yeah, I'll say 11-1. I'll say the absolute floor for this team is 9-3, which I know would disappoint.
I think the floor is 8-4.
Okay, I don't know. I struggle to find 4 losses on the schedule. Like, I'm not. Of course, that's not impossible, I think a pretty big injury or something would have to happen. I think the floor, though, with everyone healthy, is 9-3, which a lot of people might be disappointed by. But I mean, that's still a good season, and
Yeah,
that's
and there's
still
still a shot that you can make the playoffs at 9-3. Not a
yeah,
good one, but there's still a shot.
yeah, and we're just trying to stack a few good seasons together. Going 10-2 last year was awesome. Beating Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl last year was awesome. But right now we're in the phase of the program where Drinkwitz is trying to stack a bunch of good seasons together before like we truly, really take off. He needs to build that good rapport with the fans still. Because look, one bad season and we could be back to square one.
We could be back to square one very easily. Everybody leaves in the transfer portal. Who knows what Drinkwitz says, what Drinkwitz does. I know that he's rubbed fans the wrong way because he's mad that we're not selling out Murray State this week. And I somewhat agree with him. Like, we really need to be showing, even if we know, like he said it, he's like, don't worry about that game on November 9th. Worry about the game on August 29th. Like, that's the game that we have in front of us. That's the game we have to worry about. I 100% agree. We need to sell out every single week. Show Drink that the fan base, the entire state, is committed and is supporting him and this program, because we have Matt Zollers, the number 2 quarterback commit in the country, coming into this university next year. That has never happened at Mizzou. That does not happen here. That's not something that's ever happened. And that's that is the possibility, is that we have the number 2 quarterback in all of high school recruiting coming into Mizzou next year. We need to show him, we need to show Drink, and we need to show everybody else what this university is all about, because there's a really good shot that if Drinkwitz builds the team the right way and we have a really good year this year, make the playoffs, maybe not make the playoffs next year because we have even more guys leaving and like this core will really be gone after this year, but he can reload next year and then really build around Matt Zollers and build this team into a consistent college football playoff team. This year,
that's what we're still working towards, and that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make. Like, right now we're a team that's like hoping to get in, but we're not like a lock or anything like that. Drinkwitz can keep building this thing to where every single year people are projecting Missouri in the college football playoff and the 12-team playoff.
I think that he can get them to that point, and a lot of that really hinges on the fan support from this year, Drink and this entire team's ability this year, and then just every year after that. Like this year is a very important year for the next decade of Missouri football. Absolutely.
So I agree with everything on all fronts. I think that's a good stopping point for this episode, our first episode of the 2024 season. Brayden, it's been fun, but before we leave, anything you want to plug? Do I even have to say it?
Show Me Movies. I haven't uploaded there in a while. I would really like to start getting into that again.
When Terrifier 3 comes out, though, oh boy, I will be cranking out content.
I know you'll be doing your hour-long breakdown. I haven't uploaded on Show Me Movies in a bit. I'm going to try to here pretty soon. We're getting into Oscar season, so there's been a lot of really good movies to come out that I would like to talk about. So if you want to see me talk about some films, follow us over on there as well.
There you guys have it, and that'll all be in the description down below. As for me, you're already here. Go ahead, like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this. You can check my work out at showmefootball.com for more. And yeah, with all that being said, we'll see you all in the next one. MIZ.
ZOU.